All right, guys, a couple days later after getting the swing arm back from Bernheisel Race Components, almost forgot the name, we're going to start getting it set up. My only minor little thing that I did notice that they did, but I mean, it's kind of hard to not get it there, is unfortunately they did get some powder coating inside the arm where the axle adjusters go. So I'm hoping that everything still fits in there nicely. If not, maybe I'll put a little bit of grease on the adjusters themselves, like these adjust blocks, and make sure that they slide in right. But we're gonna go ahead and get the arm prepped, get the fresh all balls swing arm bearings and pivot bearings and everything in. I did go ahead and order new dust seals off Motorsport. Honestly, Motorsport and I think it's Partzilla, by far the best places to get OEM off the shelf stuff for busas, especially little things like this. There's a lot of things that like supersede it. You can get them on eBay. A lot of times people sell them, but it always seems like Motorsport or Partzilla always has them in stock. So go check them out. But we're gonna go ahead and get the arm put back together and hopefully get it on the bike, get the turbo bike off the stand, and then probably in this video, if not, I'll have a little clip of it. We have a subscriber and follower of the Instagram who's actually bringing his bike down from New York for a air shifter and a shift light. So hopefully he'll be down here in a couple hours. But other than that, we're gonna go ahead and keep cranking here on the swing arm and try to get the turbo bike off the lift and back on rubber again. All right, guys, a little bit of TLC, a little bit of elbow grease. Yeah, that sleeve isn't exactly centered in there, but it moves, so we're still good to go. Went ahead and got our pivot bearing in. Went ahead and put in some riv nuts in here so that way we can take the chain guard on and off, because I found out when I stripped this off, these bolts were literally just the head of a bolt glued in, and then this was like epoxied onto the arm. So now it is removable. The riv nuts really helped us out with that. Our sliders went in, just a little bit of love tap on the hammer, just with the some of the powder coating getting inside the channel. But other than that, everything went together smoothly. Our arm is set. The only thing that I might do is we still have that pink tire hugger that was off of this bike. Well, since this has an Evo arm that doesn't have the chain guard with the mount on it, I might try to repaint that tire hugger and then put a plate over here so that way I can put a hugger on this and then we should be good. But we're all set. Everything should be set to the correct length. Put her on the bike and turbo bike will be on rubber again. All right, guys, well, I skipped ahead a good bit. A little bit of work. Managed to get our arm hooked up. The only thing we have to do, we have to get the brake stop or the arm hooked back up. Get our air lines hooked up, which luckily I have some spares or some brand new fittings so we can get some fresh stuff. And everything looks pretty good. The only thing we have to do yet that I am gonna have on order is I need to get my chain. I need like 180 to 190 link chain. I have a feeling it's 180, but turbo bike will be sitting on rubber momentarily. Another thing too, from DME and Mr. Dustin Lee managed to pick up some Cometic oil pan gaskets so we can hopefully get the oil issue fixed on Pinky, because I don't know if you can see it, but we're leaking oil and it keeps coming from the left side of the oil pan. So hopefully we'll get the turbo bike off the stand, get Pinky on the stand, get our fresh gasket in, and then hopefully, which I have to double check, where did I put it? We have, okay, I might have lost it. Give me a minute. Never mind, found it. This is our master cylinder rebuild for the pink bike, and from All Balls Racing. This should help with that issue that we were having, which was the almost like it had a fade, like you'd pull the clutch the whole way in and it would lose just a little bit of pressure, enough that you can notice the clutch plates move back in. But hopefully once we do that, then we're good to go. But turbo bike, I'll be glad to have this thing off the lift. It's been sitting in the same spot since, what, October? And it honestly has not moved. All right, guys, went ahead and got everything hooked up. We got our airlines hooked up. I gotta go through and clean that, but airlines hooked up. We have our brake line routed. We have our support held up. So, yeah, I think it's time. Let's get the turbo bike off the stand. See if this gets all over the exhaust or not. Looking pretty clean. Granted, we only had like a handful of passes on this since our oil change in the first place, but yeah, pretty much the only issue I've been having is that leak seems to be coming from right around here, and I'm pretty sure that the gasket's just shot, because you can see a little bit of oil gathering on this edge. So hopefully that's our issue. We can go ahead and pull these out. Yeah, we might have another leak back in here, but it's not a crazy amount, but it's enough to be concerning. So all right, well, drained everything, took all the plugs out, brand new gasket. Go ahead and get this in, get the oil back in. That should be all we need. I got the pup watching me. Now, that doesn't mean you can come up. You're gonna whack your head on the oil pan. But almost ready to get this done. You being my assistant today? All right, let's get this done. All right, guys. Well, oil pan is on. I'm kind of going to give it a leak check. I know that it's a little cold, so it might not actually leak out. But pan's on. Everything's torqued. We're going to just see if it happens to leak overnight. I did go ahead and top off our oil. We're actually full in the window. I double-checked the filter while I was at it. And, yeah, we're just going to see how she looks in the morning. And then we're going to tear into the master cylinder. I'm not looking forward to that, but it needs to be done. So be back in the morning, work on it again. No leak. You could see, I think it was just residual, like a little bit of oil along the edge of the gasket. But I went through, found out my Newton meter conversion, which was only like 7 foot-pounds. Went ahead and retorqued these. The only thing that I found a problem with is I'm gonna have to get a longer bolt. I believe it was this one right here, is stripped, because when I even went to torque it just a little bit, it kept spinning. So I have a feeling that I might need to get a longer bolt just to make sure that I hit threads. But other than that, everything else is retorqued. I went ahead and wiped any residual off the sides here, and we're just gonna keep an eye on it. But we're gonna pull the master off and get to rebuilding. We got some of the disassembly good. I do see what could be my problem, which is the amount of all that brown is just caked inside this. So I'm gonna go ahead and run everything through the parts cleaning bin and try to get everything as clean as I possibly can, because yeah, that shouldn't look like that. So give me a minute, I'll be right back. All right, guys, well, excuse the windscreen. I needed the height to use my T-handle Allen screws to put the cap back on the master. We got everything bled, ready to go. This is a lot stiffer than it was last year. So I might look into a new lever just to give me more leverage. This lever is kind of short. But anyway, we did get this on. This was probably the longest bleed job that I ever had to do. It took me like 30 minutes to get this thing bled to where it had good pressure. It seemed like every time I was doing it, I would lose pressure. So it just took a while. Since everything, the master was bone dry since I rebuilt it, it just took a while till I got all the air pockets out. But anyway, it feels good. I went over and opened up the fill cap and checked that while I held the lever, and it is separating the plates a lot more than it used to. So hopefully that's something to get figured out. But again, it's very, very stiff. The only other thing I might do is I might swap out the clutch springs. I think I did do half and half with heavy versus stock. So I might do maybe 2 heavy and 4 stock, because I don't know if I want to do 1. I don't think I can, based on how the springs are laid out. It's kind of nice to keep even pressure, so at least 2 of a modified spring rate. But anyway, I think that's pretty much it for Pinky. The biggest thing that I wanted to do to this bike is she still needs a radiator. I'm looking into options of doing, just to have it, because that way I don't need pushback. I don't have to worry about overheating or anything like that, is just doing an electronic water pump and a cut radiator. Just enough to get me a pass, get back to the trailer, and then just let everything cool down. But we are going to be looking into some clutch options, and I'll kind of explain those here in a minute. Pretty much, since we got the clutch and everything good on this, I want to kind of go a little bit into detail about what we're going to be trying to do with Pinky. Again, I'm waiting on a little bit of research yet, and I'm hoping that I can get everything in time. The only thing that we have left for the bikes, Pink bike, yes, I would love to get a cut radiator, electronic water pump. That way I have some kind of cooling method for this bike. But if it stays a dry block, it stays a dry block. Turbo bike just needs the chain, possibly the tail, which again is kind of hit or miss. I don't know if I'm going to get it or not. Now, the other thing that we have is trying to figure out what possible clutch option we can put in Pinky to make it consistent. A lot of guys run Gen 2s, a lot of guys run sliders, whether it's a Hayes or a MTC slider. And then you just have true hand clutch. Some guys run the Snowflake clutch, which is, it still allows it to be hand clutch, but it lets you have softer springs. And then you basically, it uses the same clamping method as like a slider does, to where once you have more RPM in the motor and more wheel speed, everything starts to mesh together a lot tighter. So that's more high horsepower, but still hand clutch. So basically, we're looking at a couple options. We have the Gen 2s, we have the sliders. I am looking into Recluse makes an auto clutch for these bikes. A lot of times it's more street bikes. It's only like street riding and casual around town kind of use. But basically what that allows you to do is you can pull up to a light, put the bike into first, and at idle, you can just sit there. The second you give it RPM, it'll take off. Kind of like a slider, but not. So they use a different method that has a device that sits inside the clutch pack that actually allows it to engage and disengage. So it's something I'm looking into. I have been reaching out to Recluse and talking with them about it just to see if it's even a viable option. And it could be an option that we end up running on the Pink bike, which is very cost effective because it is nearly a third of the price that it would be to go with a slider route. And this is all basing it off brand new pricing. So if you do a brand new Gen 2 versus a brand new slider versus the new Recluse, there's a lot less stuff you need for the Recluse. You don't need the quick access cover, but it is nice to have because you do still have to modify, do a little bit of tuning to have the clutch running to what you want. You do have to tune it a little bit. So the quick access cover is kind of something you can't get away from. So it's like a $500 to $600 upgrade that you have to do unless you get used. I mean, you can get them used for $300, but basing it off all brand new pricing, you're looking at like $500 to $600 for a quick access clutch cover. And then if you go with a Gen 2 clutch, you're looking at $2,200 a clutch. And then if you go with a slider, you're looking at $1,600 a clutch. Plus, the slider needs a ride back device, whether hydraulic or air assist, which air assist is what I run on the turbo bike. It's a nice option. I did have an issue with it. It actually left me kind of stranded in one of my races because the ride back device, the pressure regulator actually went out and I couldn't engage the clutch without having to, it wouldn't allow me to engage the clutch because the air system completely crapped out. No air shifter, no nothing. So it was just a little bit of a pain. So we have options. I'm just trying to do the research to make sure we find the best bang for our buck option. But other than that, the pink bike could remain just a hand clutch bike. We'll get used to it. The only thing I might do is possibly look into a set of Vortex levers, do a long lever for the clutch, short lever for the brake, because the clutch is the one that we need the most feel. The front brake, don't really need it that bad. So we don't need a massive lever. We just need a big one for the clutch so we have better feel for our hand. But pretty much we're going to be where we're going to wrap it up here today. We got both busas pretty much ready to go, and they're honestly almost ready for racing season. The turbo bike, I might do an oil change. I think she'll be okay because I did an oil change, I think before we were going to do kind of our like last hurrah for the season, but then that's when I found that the swing arm was broken. So I'll double check, but we might do an oil change just before the season and then restock on oil and filters, and then we'll be good to go. But as always, guys, I hope you liked this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. Anything more about the bikes, more about the channel, drop those comments down below, as well as check the companies down below. All the companies listed below are companies that I've used to help me build these bikes and where I order most of my parts from. So be sure to check them out. And as always, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell for notifications, and I will see you guys in the next one. Remember, ride safe, ride smart, always wear your helmet. See ya.